Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest in our series of speaker interviews. My name is Maurice Button. I'm the CEO of City and Financial Global, and it's a great pleasure to have with us today Mark Gough, who's the CEO of Capitals Coalition. Mark will be speaking at the Natural Capitals Summit being held in London on the 13th of November. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, Maurice.
Very, very good to have you with us today. Let's turn to the questions. First, please could you tell us a little bit about the approach of and the strategy of the Capitals Coalition?
Yes, well, capital, the idea of capital, I'm sure a lot of your audience will be very familiar with that, particularly financial capital. If you invest in your financial capital, you will get returns. So the idea that actually it's not just finance we need to think of like that, but also nature, people, society, the trust of society. We need to invest in that capital as well. And if we do invest in it, we get returns. So this concept's been around for some time, but particularly when we start thinking about the integrated reporting movement, or we start thinking about all the work that's going on in sustainability at the moment, the idea of having a language where you can actually think about nature and people and society and the economics all in one framework is really helpful. So what we've done is we've brought together all of the global community that are working in this space on this concept of what is value, what is the value of these capitals. And we help to curate that movement. So we bring together those people to think about what are the tools, the resources, the frameworks that they need, and to build up application. We've got thousands of businesses around the world that are now applying this strategically in the way that they think about the decisions that they make every day.
Very good. Very good. So very comprehensive sort of wide stakeholder approach. You mentioned that one of those capitals is natural capital, and I know that you developed a natural capital protocol. Can you tell us a bit about the core elements of that?
Yes, well, back in 2012, 2013, there were 40 different approaches that you could have taken as a business to apply natural capital. And what we did was all of those people that were writing them, and I was actually one of the authors of one of them myself, we all sat down together and we said, look, this is silly. Why are we competing on the methodology? Why don't we compete actually on the application of this? So we all came together and developed the Natural Capital Protocol. So it's the culmination of a lot of work you'll be familiar with from the accountancy firms, from the World Bank, from people like Kering, who were one of the first to do work on natural capital. So we brought all of those people together. And this framework is a step-by-step process. It's very easy to follow. You go through and it asks you why you should start thinking about this, what you should do, how you go about the valuation and the measurement pieces, and then so what? What does this actually mean in decision-making in business? And it's been applied by, like I said, thousands of different companies around the world have already applied it, not just in the private sector, in the public sector as well. So it's a very structured approach to be able to bring nature into the decisions. And a good example would be, I've used this many times. I spent about 20 years in businesses before coming over to the Capitals Coalition. And when we were doing the work there in business, I'd be asked many times, what was how do you actually bring this nature into the decision? And I'd have arguments for that, but putting it into the economics, putting it into a language that CFOs understand, and using this structured approach really makes a difference.
Yes, because I should imagine if you use the language that people understand, it's much easier for them to get their heads around what is meant. I suppose then that the TNFD must have been a welcome development from your point of view. How have you worked with them?
So we are one of the knowledge partners of the TNFD. So we work very closely with them and have all the way through this process. And particularly on the LEAP model that some of your audience may be aware of in the TNFD, there's a part of it called LEAP. Within that, you can actually see how the Natural Capital Protocol that we've just been talking about was brought in to that process. So we've helped them to develop that directly into the LEAP model. So if you're applying TNFD, you're basically applying the Natural Capital Protocol guidance. It's not one or other. There are actually two different ways to help you to get into that. So you can have been applying with us the natural capital work for years, and it may be logical now to go on to thinking about how are you going to put this into disclosures, how are you going to connect this up? Well, then you can use the TNFD, or if you're new to this, then it might introduce you to some of the work around valuation that's there. So very much connected to TNFD and very much supportive of it.
So, which is excellent news. I mean, the more people work together, I think the more effective the progress in this area will be. And do you think the TNFD will now be the key way of getting companies and other organizations to value nature properly in their financial decisions? Do you think it marks a milestone in the development of this approach?
Definitely. Almost every other conversation I'm having at the moment comes back to the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures work. So it is definitely a milestone. I think one of the best things that the team have done there at TNFD is they've really pulled upon all of the existing work. So much of the work you'll find in TNFD is being consolidated from people that have already tested it out. So it's based around the climate disclosures work already. So it's already going to feed in through that. It's also got science-based targets connections, the business for nature community, all of those things, and our work obviously on the protocol and assessments. All of that coming together into a structured framework for businesses in a way that is accessible. So there's going to be iterations, there's going to be some hurdles in the way, but when you add that TNFD work to the work that's going on in the International Sustainability Standards Board, the European work that's going in, all of those other steps as well, it's definitely changing the landscape. I think one key thing, though, is that TNFD isn't just about disclosures. They have very cleverly brought in how you actually make those decisions as well. So it's important. You can't just disclose things. You have to actually do something as well. And TNFD takes a step beyond just disclosures to start thinking about those impacts and dependencies, about what you do every day in your business. And that is going to be really key in this, that we actually lead to change from this.
And what, to just follow on from that last point, what are the key challenges in taking a more holistic approach towards companies' use of nature and their relationship with nature?
Well, I mean, nature is going to be more complicated than many other things. I've worked for businesses for many years, and collecting all of that information alone is challenging. Understanding where you've got your locations, what the local impacts, because it's a local issue. So if you've got operations around the world, understanding those local issues and the context of it is going to be key. But that's why it's so important that you're not just measuring. And this is what TNFD does. It doesn't say, tell me how many trees you've planted, because that doesn't give me any information that's helpful. It tells me the value of what you've captured there. How many trees have you planted? No, actually the value of those trees that you've planted actually becomes useful information for decision making. I think the other big thing here is that we're doing nature here with TNFD. There is also starting up now the TISFD, which is looking at the inequality and social elements. And ultimately, a business doesn't work just looking at nature or just looking at climate or just looking at the economics. Every day, every decision we make has got to take all of these in the whole. We're actually working at the moment on an integrated protocol, looking at the trade-offs. How do you actually deal with these trade-offs between all of the different capitals here? So TNFD, definitely a milestone, definitely an important step. But in real life decisions, we've got to think about how they integrate. And that's going to be the next big hurdle. And that's going to be a big hurdle for many people. How do we deal with the complexity of these things? Now, human beings are brilliant at dealing with complexity. We can deal with this, but we need the tools and resources to get there. And TNFD is one of the key ones.
Fantastic. Well, let's hope we now move towards that more holistic approach, taking into account all of those capitals. Mark, sadly, we've run out of time. We look forward to discussing in more detail many of these elements with you and the other speakers at the Natural Capital Summit in London on the 30th of November. And we very much hope that our viewers will be able to join us there in person. So it just remains to say thank you very much, Mark, for sharing those insights.
Thank you.